is a living document, and you all are keeping it alive, and I am just ecstatic over that. So I'm very happy to be in this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. I appreciate that opening. And again, appreciate all that work that you've done on council on climate action. I know and hope you'll have a exciting year on that going forward in 2021 with the new council. So with that, we want to go ahead and welcome Elaine Sargent to Elaine has a brief presentation to kind of recap again the main recommendations and findings from the task force from 2 years ago. And so Elaine chaired the task force, and we're going to ask Elaine to go ahead and share her screen, make sure we can work on that and get that done. Looks like she's working on it. Yeah. You have that focused face we make on Zoom when we're trying to make something work. So
yeah, I don't here we go. Okay.
Is it working for you?
Well, I'm seeing it in a little window, but that's probably a thing of with all these people on. Do you see it?
Did you hit click share screen? Just the green button at the bottom in the center. Yep.
Do you see it?
Not yet.
Okay. Now do you see it?
Now we've got it. You're there.
Oh,
yeah.
Great. Okay. Great. This some of you will be familiar with this slideshow, but I'll go through it pretty quickly. I knew there would be people on the on this talk that would not have not seen this or know a whole lot about the task force. So this is the title of the final report, Climate Action Recommendations, a blueprint for addressing climate change at the municipal level, presented in November of 2018, excuse me. There, oops. Went too far. Something's happening. Okay, background. Excuse me. I'm going to take 10 minutes just getting organized here. Okay, so the resolution, as Sherry said, to form the climate task force happened in August 2014. Sherry was instrumental in getting this going. She worked for 350 for over a year before it ever got to the city council, and they approved it unanimously. So then we moved on. The Environmental Advisory Board made some their goals and objectives suggestions, and then we met in 2017. And this is the makeup of the task force: 7 members and 2 advisors. And our goals and objectives were, again, from the EAB, the Environmental Advisory Board of the city. And those were our starting points. They were suggested. And the graphic here shows how important mitigation is and adaptation. They're both equal in importance. So, and they work together. So please keep that in mind as we move on. And I'm giving people enough time to read these. I hope so. Okay. And then our areas of emphasis. We came to these through our work early on, and these were areas of emphasis. So all of the final report had headings like these. Okay, and our greenhouse gas emissions. The goal is, of course, to reduce our emissions, you know, and the goal for the city is to get to 100% renewable energy. That's our recommendation. So there's a large portion of the, and throughout, there's ways to reach that throughout the task force report. By the way, it's on the city site. At the end, I'm going to show you a link. It's kind of hard to find. So you may have to do a search even with the link because it's a long name. Okay. And then transportation. It's so important because transportation is, in the US, is the largest source of our greenhouse gas emissions. And our local efforts can make a difference. So we have strategies for improving transportation and our land use to reduce our fossil fuel use. And more resilience as well to the impacts. of climate change. And our built environment. The city can take a look at new and existing buildings and infrastructure and plan for the future. What's interesting, we noted when I was talking to Christian earlier today, that the photograph we used here was showing built environment, showing the rocks that create a seawall. And this is along Bayfront Parkway. But it's interesting that the cyclist is on the sidewalk, and that would be an improvement we'd make where the street is safe for cyclists as well, so the road can be shared. And emergency planning, how important is that? It's very important because you've seen the storms, you've seen the flooding, and so it's important that with these changes in our climate and its impacts, that all of our emergency planning is prepared for the future. So that's our objective there. And there's lots of steps too, again, on the report. And the local utilities, I think we emphasized working with the local utilities here so that we could transition to zero emissions. But we also want to emphasize that there are local businesses, solar businesses, that we'd like to tap if it was available to us. Third-party sources, and right now the state of Florida is blocking that. We're one of 4 states that doesn't allow us to purchase our solar energy directly from third parties. So we're just moving too slowly. The local utilities, we have to work with them, of course, and we want to work with them, and but it's moving too slowly because they have monopolies and they monopolize energy, and they're just moving too slowly because they're still making good money off of fossil fuels, and we need choices. My thoughts. And public health, we had Dr. Chris Ueho of FSU, professor of public health there, and he advised us on this section. Of course, there are many illnesses that are related to climate change, and we need to be prepared for them as well. Outreach and education, this is very important, and if you see a good example of our outreach is to efforts can be seen in what 350 Pensacola does. I mean, they're educating. They've been doing this for several years, actually since 2010, and getting that message out there, how important it is. And we need the involvement of the community. We need people who want to get on, engage in a green economy. So the only way we can do that is through education and people wanting to get involved. So that's that objective. Of course, it goes into more detail in the actual report. And then economic development and resilience. It's, a green economy and jobs are viable now. Jobs are well paying and they're growing. And the only obstacle is our acceptance of it, of our ability as a community to bring it in. So let's, look at that, and the city can encourage that. And then we have those kinds of strategies in the report as well to incentivize energy conservation, retrofit, et cetera, that brings on industry. And in the planning, these next 2 slides are mostly about mitigation. And again, the goal is a pledge to reduce GHG emissions. That's one of the most important things. To complete an inventory of citywide GHG emissions. I believe that's underway. And to join regional and national climate organizations. These were recommendations. here's a couple of groups, Compact of Mayors, ICLEI. I think Christian said you may have joined ICLEI as a city, so city council. More planning, of course, there's that commitment that we're looking at. Commitment to a 30% renewable energy target by 2030. That's only 10 years. And set a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040. As you can see, we haven't gotten very far towards that. And that's why it's critical now that we're looking at this tonight and we have a new city council that can start moving forward. And some city employees, I think, that are qualified to push it forward as well. So onward. These next two slides are more about adaptation again. Of course, we need to do these things, and this is planning ahead, and that's why it's under planning. Instead of it, these things are all part of those other emphases that we listed before, but we're breaking it out here under planning. This photo, of course, this is downtown. It's one of those areas that we've created to catch stormwater, but stormwater is a big problem here, obviously, and flooding. So city can be a big part in that, in their comprehensive plan and their, and we move forward. So the task force findings and recommendations, this was really just kind of a summary of what we, at the end of the final report. And so there, again, it's climate mitigation and adaptation element into the comprehensive plan. I don't know that, you know, who's working on that or if that's become a part of it yet, but that's a big goal. The completing of an inventory of citywide GHG or greenhouse gas emissions. I believe that's underway as well. I think some of these people will be able to answer these questions, but some of our guests. And funding, that's always a big thing, finding the funding for, we have great ideas and we have to find the funding. And here we go, conducting a vulnerability assessment. I think that's underway as well. We can hear more about that. We said to reestablish the City of Pensacola Office of Sustainability, but we actually have people now that are working on sustainability. So we're headed towards that. And then the Environmental Advisory Board, again, they're still meeting, from what I understand. They need to continue pushing for all these goals that are in the plan. Not only they're there, they speak to the city council. I think Sherry goes to a lot of their meetings, but it's very important that they keep doing that work. Pursue grant opportunities, etc. And okay, here are my personal thoughts. I just put this up here because I got involved through 350 Pensacola after the oil spill. I think many of us thought climate change was kind of out there somewhere and we didn't have to do much, that other people would take care of it. Well, lo and behold, we had the oil spill that kind of set us off. So we started doing research locally and we formed our group. But what I'm trying to say here as a personal thought is that James Hansen has been around a long time. He spoke first to the Senate, the committee. Let me see what the committee was. I got that in notes. Committee on Energy and Natural Resources in 1988. And he drew the line. He showed how greenhouse gas emissions were accelerating our global warming. Yet we didn't do anything. You know, we kept putting it off. And so in 2008, this statement right here, if humanity wishes to preserve a planet similar to that on which civilization developed and to which life on Earth is adapted, paleoclimate evidence and ongoing climate change suggest that CO2 will need to be reduced from its current 385 parts per million to at most 350 parts per million. That was just in 2008. 12 years later, we are most regularly above 410 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. And that's not going to work if we want to slow climate change down. And we'll have to keep trying to adapt, but I don't think we'll be able to catch up unless we start doing something today. And I think, we are doing something, but there's a lot more we can do. And Dr. Hansen, he was the former director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. And he retired in April 2014 because he wanted to be more active. Action is the word here. Take action. He wanted to become more active in actually getting the solutions, creating solutions. Because as a government employee, he couldn't be as vocal. So that's where I am. I want to tell you that I'm telling you all of this because I want to light a fire. The time now is for action, of course. Climate change is the most important issue we face as human beings. And we can be effective on the local level. Cities do hold the key, and many cities are moving forward. So my hat is off to the city and its new council. And I think that we're getting a great start tonight to a new year, 2021. We can make it all start happening. So that's the end of my presentation. But just to let you know that, let me go to the next slide so you'll know. Oops, wrong one. Anyway, let me just say the task force, somehow that didn't end up in there. The task force final report, the climate action recommendations are online. If you just type in City of Pensacola climate, you'll find it pretty easily. I did have a link that I was going to show, but it's long. It's a long title. So if you that's how I found it, came up pretty quickly. Climate action, City of Pensacola. I mean, I encourage people to look at it, even if you're not a, just average citizen like me. Okay. Thank you.
And Elaine, thank you for that. And if you want, there we go. I was going to ask somebody would pop it in the chat. So it's in the chat now for everybody there. It'll take you right to the document. Thank you for that, Carrie.
Oh, okay.
And Elaine, thank you for doing that. Thank you for all that you've done. For those who don't know Elaine, she's really one of the founders of or co-founders of the local climate movement. There's two people I credit that with from back in 2010 or even earlier, and that's Larry Chamlin and then also Elaine Sargent, both who co-founded 350 Pensacola. And Larry actually held a larger forum on climate change, I think at Pensacola State College back even maybe in 2007 or 8 or something, that had hundreds of people there. So you both really have done great things for the climate movement here in Pensacola. So thank you again for your work chairing the task force, and thank you for that recap again this evening, Elaine. And you'll stay around to the end, I know, hopefully, so you can take some questions and do that at the end. So with that, I want to welcome and ask Mark Jackson, the sustainability coordinator for the City of Pensacola, to say a few words, updating us all on the city's progress on meeting some of the recommendations in the task force report. Mark's been on the job, I think, for about 6 months or so now. He's been fantastic. He's really hit the ground running. He's been great to work with. He asks all the right questions. He's digging in. He's very responsive to citizen concerns. And it's just really doing a great job. He served in the United States Marine Corps, and he was also working for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers prior to moving up here from Miami to take the job with the city. So we're really, really lucky to have him here. He's doing great work. And Mark, thank you for sharing this evening. Whoops, we've got you muted, Mark. Still, I can't hear you.
Hear me still?
Not sure what's going on there, Mark.
Y'all not hear me?
There we go. Now we got you.
Okay.
Yep, we got you.
All right. So yeah, thanks again for the introduction. And just as just wanted to spend this couple minutes.
So what? Hang on one second, Mark. Hang on one second. The volume's going in and out. It may be an internet connectivity issue. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if there's anything you can I'm not sure if there's anything you can do about it. Or Mike, so yeah, somebody says maybe a microphone issue. So we heard you loud and clear, I think, before the meeting started, when we all got on. So yeah, but it's very faint. It's very faint. I don't know if there's a volume.
And project as much as I can. Sorry.
That's a little better. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. I think that might work if you can do it like that.
All right, we'll do. So the first thing that we have is the ICLEI. We joined ICLEI. That was before I came on board in, I believe, January of this year or December of last year. We're also members of Florida Local Environmental Resource Agency, or FLARE. As a part of ICLEI, a greenhouse gas emissions inventory was done. However, it wasn't the greatest, but I'll tell you what what we came from it. We had 4,881 metric tons of CO2 emitted from our fleet and 14,528 metric tons from our building and facilities. Again, there is some holes in that we found, and we're just going to go back and try to get a little bit more accurate. We're using Sustainabase. They're going to come in and help us with actively monitoring our greenhouse gas emissions.
So hey Mark, let's stop you from it's going in and out a lot. It sounds okay for like a second and a half maybe or something, and then it goes away where it's hard to hear you again. So I don't know if maybe you want to see if I don't know if there's anything you can do on your end or not. I was thinking of maybe jumping over to Cynthia and letting her do her part maybe for a little while and seeing if I'm not sure if there's anything you can do or not. Somebody had said in the chat maybe there was if you had headphones plugged in, that may complicate things. I'm not sure if there's anything you can do or if you want to try doing something. Does that sound like a plan? Because I think it's
I'll
here.
I'll move to my desktop.
Okay, let's do that. So Cynthia, you're up next then. So how about?
Okay, so can you hear me?
We hear you great. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen to get the serious face that you got from Elaine while I try to do this. So I will go ahead then, and we will go into this in slideshow mode. And I'm going to go through this quickly, Christian, because I know this was a much longer presentation than that was kind of desired for this session. So we have plenty of time for Q&A. But first, I just want to say, one, it's great to see all the task force members because it's been a very long time. So it's always good to see these faces again. It was nice working with everybody. And thank you, Christian, for bringing us all together, again, giving us this opportunity. As Elaine said, one of the recommendations in the findings was definitely the pursuit of grants and obviously to carry these out. So we were pleased to apply for it's the Florida Resilient Coastline Programs Grant. That's with the FDP, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And we certainly had the support of the mayor's office and administration in pursuing this grant that made us very competitive in the sense that they agreed to a local match, to add a match this grant, which was not something that was required. So, and Elaine has already gone over the findings, so I won't I'm not going to do that again. You can see we did incorporate, as we go into this vulnerability assessment, we were incorporating these findings and other reports from some of our neighboring communities. But just for those, I think the majority of the people on here know what a vulnerability assessment is, but I just want to take a minute to give a really quick summary so that we have all on the same page. And this is per the FDEP guidelines, but basically it consists of measuring the impact of sea level rise and identifying the people, infrastructure, and land uses that may be impacted. So this is going to be, this vulnerability model that we're going to look at is going to provide kind of a macro view of what sea level rise may look like. It's going to help us to inform decision makers and elected officials on policy decisions. It's going to help inform planners of potential future conditions that we need to start planning for now. We'll go into project prioritization. And of course, it's going to inform work to mitigate future flood risk. So we start off with the big gap analysis. We start going in and gathering as much data as possible. And that's kind of where we are now. It's a pretty big stage. And this is a critical stage because how you start this model and how you do your discovery is going to be the quality of what comes out of this when we start running models and sea level rise and looking at different planning scenarios. We're going to tie this with our community rating system. So our work here is going to help us improve our CRS score. And what that means for flood insurance holders out there within the National Flood Insurance Program is reduced insurance premiums. So it's a direct economic benefit to the community. So that's one thing. And there's a lot of details when you get into this. But again, I'm going to stay at this real macro level as we go through here. But it dives pretty deep. So again, we're going to do this gap analysis. I'm going to kind of run through this. We're going to identify the people. We'll have a series of maps. We're going to show this infrastructure, critical facilities, and we're going to kind of do heat maps highlighting where these are located, so we can really get honed down. And then as we do this, so this is very much the planning phase, right? But when we do kind of get through this big data collection part of it, and then we're going to go into an analytical phase. This is we'll start looking at prioritizing capital improvement processes and planning processes and so forth. We'll talk about the impacts of the changing ecosystems and how we view this assessment of shorelines and policies. So we're really going to take a really deep dive into these goals and how this assessment can help the city better respond during disasters and rebuilding more resiliently in the future. Elaine mentioned the comprehensive plan, and that was one of the goals of the task force as well, was to really evaluate the coastal management element. But in doing so, the city needs to update their peril of flood requirements. And basically, this was a Senate bill that was put into act May 21st, 2015. And it basically falls, kind of gets grouped into two parts. And this is what we'll focus on in the comp plan and tie it to resiliency. But the first part is to include development and redevelopment principles, strategies, and engineering solutions that reduce the flood risk in coastal areas, which result from high tide events, storm surge, flash floods, stormwater runoff, and the related impacts of sea level rise. So that's category 1. And then category 2 is encourage the use of best practices, development and redevelopment principles, strategies, and engineering solutions that will result in the removal of coastal real property from flood zone designations established by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So that's a really big task. But we will be working to go through this process. Again, then it gets very specific. If you were to Google the act, you would see these redevelopment components must include these 6 specific strategies. So we will go into more than likely our coastal management element and probably create our own peril of flood section so you can see these. You won't have to search through the comp plan to find these. But at the same time, we will take a real comprehensive look at the city's comp plan to look at all of their sections, transportation, what have you, where we need to now go in and kind of update the policy and add these resiliency, this resiliency language, thinking really long-term on how we plan ahead. Somebody had asked, where can you find information? So that's a great question, because we have a great story to tell. So we're also in the process of working on the City of Pensacola Resiliency Story Map. And I won't run you through every page of this. It's not a live link yet. You know, our message there is anywhere it can rain, it can flood, period. And we're going to drive that home. And we don't want this to be, we want this to be fun. We want it to be kind of cool. You can sit down with your children, elected officials can sit down with their constituents, and you're going to scroll through this. You're not getting a big PDF document that people don't want to look at. So when we talk about the education and outreach component of it, we want to make that a little more fun and interesting for people to come in and learn about their area and what they can do for better mitigation and adaptation strategies. So, and of course, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're looking around the country at cities and local governments that are already doing this and doing it very well. So we're really going to bring in their success story, kind of copy their success stories. But so we hope to have this in a good spot to launch this eventually soon. But our vulnerability analysis, all kind of things will be able to be found here, and you'll be able to go into those map series that we're going to produce, which is going to be quite a bit, and that'll be an interactive process. And then I kind of want to go, so this is for down the line, a community self-assessment. This would be a potential grant in the future. And again, I feel like if we didn't find the funds to pursue this community self-assessment tool, we could probably pull a great team together between our neighbors in Escambia County, Santa Rosa, and of course the city staff, and kind of conduct this ourselves. And I'm going to go through this quickly, Christian. I think you've heard this before, but this CRI, so where do you start? First of all, this is again an FTEP tool, but basically you bring together this team. It's about a full day workshop with some very strategic people in the community. You build these two scenarios, these storm scenarios, and you have all the variables in play. One would be a benchmark storm in the past that I suspect now it's typically been Ivan. I wonder now if it won't be Sally. And you double that 50%. And then you run through some of these metrics on how you would respond if that were to hit your community. So you're getting a score. Basically, you have these different metrics for infrastructure and facilities, transportation issues, community plans and agreements, mitigation measures, business plans and social systems. Then you're going to rate these metrics here, under this critical infrastructure against this bad storm scenario 1 and this future storm scenario 2. And you're going to start building a score on these. So again, I'm not going to go through all of it. You just get a sense of what this worksheet looks like. So when you're in this room with this group of people, you're all looking at this workbook, you're all filling it out, and you're having a conversation. The social systems, this is a very, very important piece of this community self-assessment. We don't rate as well here as we think we do. We have an incredibly high suicide rate after floodings and hurricanes leave communities in their wake. So this will be something that we'll maybe look at a pilot project to do in Pensacola. And then at the end of this, when we do get to this point, we say it's not about the score, it's about the discussion more than anything else. So you're not trying to get a good score here, you're trying to be honest, and you're really finding out what your strengths and weaknesses are. So, and then when we do this, this also makes you more competitive for grants in the future, because now you have this kind of report card and you're really able to show what some of your, what your needs are. So I am going to see if I can't stop sharing my screen. Yeah. So that was kind of a quick assessment. But I just wanted to add on the vulnerability assessment. When we do this, when you write a grant like this and for FDP, you have your scope of work complies with a certain realm of parameters that tell you, how you're going to proceed with this. So it's not going to be the end all for everything that we need, but it's a starting point, and that's what it's meant to be. We're going to build off of this, and it's critical that this part is done very, very well, because we're going to build off so much of more of this down the line. And so it's very much a planning phase, but it does lead to your capital improvement projects. And as we do this well, each step along the way, we're more competitive for future grants to carry out and implement our findings, and as we prioritize these. So COVID slowed us down a little bit, but not that much. We're pretty much, I would say, back on track on our timeline for deliverables now. We are hoping by spring that we're kind of in a community engagement phase with this, that we're having more to present, because at this point, we don't have a lot of tangible results. We do have recommendations for how we're looking at some of the sea level rise model and model outputs with the 2040, I want to say 2070 and 2100 timelines. We'll look at like the NOAA, this language might mean more to some of you than others, but we'll look at the NOAA low, intermediate, and high and extreme sea level rise scenarios, and then and as they relate, and we'll run models on that. But again, we'll create a tremendous amount of map series. It's going to be a really deep dive technically and a lot of information to explain. So I'm going to keep it at the real high level right now. But as we have these reports, these are going to be, of course, a lot of information that's available to the community. That's going to be a great tool for other nonprofits out there too. This is data that everybody can use, that we're now pulling together in one place. And you'll be able to see that while we're going to be downloading data specific to Pensacola, you could access this data set for a different area and apply it in another location. So it's a value not just to us, but to our neighboring communities too, as a model that they can use. So now I think if I talked long enough for Mark to get on, I see Mark there, but thank you very much, Christian.
Cynthia, thank you for that, updating us on all of that. And so the meetings in the spring, will they be in person? Will they be online or a hybrid? Or
I would expect they're going to be somewhat of a hybrid. You know, I think given it's too soon to say. Obviously, as everything seems to change daily when it comes to the COVID. So, you know, of course, initially we thought they would be in person, but there's a lot of great technology out there for conducting these community engagement processes now. Using technology, we were actually finding that it's even allowed some people that wouldn't ordinarily attend maybe an in-person meeting to come and have this opportunity now. So we're seeing, in some sense, greater engagement and interest. Not across the board, but in some sense, we're giving people, we can do live surveys online. So we can put a survey out now and you can answer it right online and we get instantaneous results. Everybody can see where, so it's really fantastic.
Well, be sure to keep us posted so we can get the word out to everybody.
Absolutely.
Make sure you get good attendance and good participation. So, so with that, we're going to welcome back Mark Jackson, Sustainability Coordinator for the city. And Mark, I think just assume that we really didn't hear the last time. So if you want to start from the beginning and just give us an update on some of the progress the city's making, especially things you're working on.
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
We got you this time. Yep.
All right, so starting back at the beginning. In January or December of last year, we joined ICLEI. This, of course, was before my time here, and participated throughout the year through the kickoff, essentially like new people to ICLEI training, monthly seminars and stuff like that. So once I got hired on, I was able to view, I think, 3 of them before it finished up. We're also members of FLARA, which is a Florida Local Environmental Resource Agency. And I have not been able to participate on any of the committees yet with them, just because the way schedules have worked out. Next thing we did, the city did do a greenhouse gas assessment, and that was done through ClearPath. ClearPath and Pensacola Energy was the one that put in the information for us. That resulted in 4,881 metric tons of CO2 from our fleet, and 14,528 metric tons from our buildings and facilities. However, in looking at the data and trying to determine if it was accurate, and this was something that we would want to draft up in a report, we did find that there is some flaws in the data in the way that we obtained it and the way that we also reported it. So it's not something that we've put together in a report. And thus, we've also decided to add a consultant, or not a consultant, a contract for a software company that will process all of our energy data, energy bills, and put everything together for us in a greenhouse gas assessment that we can look at live. Any time of the day, I could log in and determine what we have, and even for which building it is as well. Moving beyond that, staff is working on an electric mobility policy to kind of build for a electric future. So we can move into more electric vehicles and that type of infrastructure. Also working with Solar United Neighbors. I'm not sure if y'all heard of them, but they're a co-op, and we'd like to bring them back. They were here in 2019. And in 2019 they saw 21 installs. Those installs of solar panels on homeowners' roofs resulted into $1 million in savings over the lifetime of the panels for the residents, and it offset 3,700 metric tons of CO2 for the life of those panels. So we would really like to get them to come back, and when they do come back and we get another co-op, hopefully we can get a couple hundred installs instead of just 21. Yeah, I've also been participating in the Pensacola and Perdido Bay Estuary Program and working on establishing a tree inventory. We'll hopefully have that kick off in the summer once the trees are in full blossom. I don't want to take up much more time, so I'll turn it back over and answer questions.
Well, thanks, Mark. Yes, stay on for our discussion part here now with everybody. So with that, I want to welcome all of our task force members. I think everybody was able to join us this evening. We thought was going to be here, except maybe Dr. Wade Jeffrey. So I haven't seen Dr. Jeffrey, but just to run down again to everybody on who's joining us from the task force this evening. That's Elaine Sargent, who is the task force chair, Cynthia Cannon, again, assistant planning director with the city of Pensacola. Carrie Stevenson is the coastal sustainability agent for the University of Florida IFAS extension here in Escambia County. Dr. Harris Alabazik is the assistant professor, Whitman faculty fellow in the public administration program out at UWF. And then I also would want to invite, of course, Mark Jackson to join in the conversation, and also Councilwoman Myers as well. We may have a question or two for you as well, Councilwoman, and I think I have one specifically for you as well, maybe ask you to share. So, so I guess just getting started off, just thinking about all of you, and the question to all of you, here we are 2 years later since you delivered your report to the council. I would ask some of you to share how each of you plans to work to carry forward the task force recommendations in the years ahead. Obviously, by being here tonight, you're participating in that, and I'm not sure what else you've been doing in the community that you may want to share in the last 2 years, but also in the months and years ahead. So I would invite any of you to jump in on that.
I'll start, Christian. Thank you everyone for being on this call. I thoroughly enjoyed the presentations. They were really well prepared and executed. And it's always great to see the task force members. And thank you, Christian, for organizing this. My name is Salabash. I'm a professor at the University of West Florida, and I teach courses in the public administration program. My level of engagement remained the same, and I continue to support any effort that the city of Pensacola and the region has on climate resilience. But I would like to see more of, and I think one of the participants asked the question about reporting and the accountability measures in place as we move forward, to see more of that in more of the reports, what's being done in all areas of economic, social, any aspect of sustainability and resilience measurements, including governance itself, and how we continue to engage community members in these efforts in climate resilience. Perhaps what I'm personally very impressed that we are moving ahead with so many recommendations already, seeing some of the aspects of ICLEI engagement, and also the city hiring of the sustainability coordinator, which was part of the recommendation from the task force. So those are all very positive, and I'm glad to see vulnerability assessment. That's a critical component that will help us get better understanding of economic and social and environmental aspects of sustainability and climate resilience. So these are really positive, and I'm glad to see so many people engaged. That's what I think brings strength to these efforts, is the community and grassroots engagement, and people just wanting to be part of it, and having that kind of leadership come from within.
Dr. Alabazik, would you recommend the city do an annual report on, say, progress in meeting the goals from the task force? Would that be helpful? You kind of touched on that. But.
Well, I think having a report on creating a sense of accountability is real, and transparency is really the part of bigger picture of governance in climate resilience, is really having that report available annually, having reports shared with public, and having benchmarks set up so that we know where we started. And the key is to have really understanding of greenhouse gas emission, and having the greenhouse gas emission inventory. And that's not just for the city, for the entire region would be extremely helpful. Most cities that have done really great job at adaptation and mitigation measures and climate resilience have started with the understanding of their greenhouse gas emissions and where they are on every level, every scale, from public to private sector.
Thank you. Would some other task force members like to jump in just with to share anything that you've been doing in the last 2 years, or are working on now, or might be working on in the near future to try to push forward some of the task force's work and recommendations?
Well, Christian, I was just going to add one thing, because while Dr. Alabazik was talking, it did make me think of the community engagement piece, but I know that we are really working to really strengthen our intergovernmental relationships with our neighboring communities. So I'm working a lot with Matt Posner, Escambia County, Tanya Gallagher over in Santa Rosa County, who both also have a real interest in resiliency projects. So that kind of teaming up and getting on that momentum is really what makes us, I think, very, very competitive. When we do pursue grants and we team up and ensure that we're working together like that, it's greatly appreciated by our state and federal partners. But also, as we kind of go into this process, we do review a lot of case studies, success stories from other communities in Florida. So we're really building on that success too. We've got a lot of communities out there that started well ahead of us. And that's okay, because we get to take their successes and their losses and really learn from them and bring it into our program. So that's all for me.
I have one thing to add too. When we were towards the end of the task force's work, we talked about coming together again. It's been 2 years now. It would be nice if we could. I know it may have to be a Zoom call, but just to further talk about where the city is, and then maybe work on a little presentation. As you know, here's where you are. I mean, it doesn't have to be that involved, but kudos to what you're doing, and here's what we think you ought to do next, or something like that. I mean, I know that, of course, you're on the staff, so but you could. It's always good to have extra voices, and that's something we had talked about doing. So, task force, if anybody's interested.
Thank you, Elaine. And I think somehow we had Carrie muted, so we'd love to hear from Carrie Stevenson.
Hey
Carrie.
y'all, before my Zoom kicks me off again, I'll just say a few words. I also wanted to echo what Dr. Alabazik said, how impressed I am with the city on how quickly they've been able to move and hiring Mark and getting Cynthia on board on really just taking these recommendations and running with them. I too was concerned it might not go.
Oh no. Oh, there we go.
Oh no.
Oh,
You
we got
lost.
you back. We got you back.
Okay. I'm going to stop my video. That'll help. I'll just be the talking icon. So a couple of things that we will be doing with extension. Tree giveaway every Arbor Day. Always give away usually up to 350 trees. Information about that will be coming up soon. And I've talked with Mark a little bit. Some of my colleagues in Central and South Florida with IFAS Extension have created a Climate Smart Floridians curriculum. It's a 9-part course that goes through home energy. It's an introduction to climate change, landscaping, transportation, all of these subjects to get people more acquainted with what the issues are and what they can do in their own homes and property. So that's going to be forthcoming this spring, hopefully. So I'll get word out to everybody who might be interested in that. So
Awesome, Carrie.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Glad you like the pitcher plants. That's over in South Alabama, but we got some great ones here too.
Awesome. Love them. So another question for everybody would be, since the transition to renewable energy really has to happen in order to address the root cause of anthropogenic climate change, what are your thoughts on how to help accelerate that transition for Pensacola? So just a reminder, that your task force, you recommended 30% by 2030 and 100% by 2040. And again, this is for city operations only, not for the public at large here in Pensacola. And also a reminder, 11 cities in Florida have already officially declared that goal through their mayor or city council. This is the goal that you've set through the task force, but it hasn't been officially endorsed yet by our mayor or our council. And we hope we can get that this coming year. But would anybody like to weigh in on that, just on some more specific thoughts on how we can accelerate that transition for Pensacola?
I would start by saying, adopting the specific targets by the city would be very helpful. It would be projecting the desire of the community and also encouraging more investment in renewables. And I'm a big proponent of solar energy, and I'm glad to hear Mark. And I spoke with Mark as soon as he was hired. Christian made a connection for us. I think the city can do a lot to propel renewables, and obviously the work has to be done with the utilities to get them involved. My previous work, I was able to work directly with the utilities up in Michigan, and that was a very important part of getting community, city government, but also getting utility engaged, and private and public sector working hand in hand is what can really expedite the renewable energy renewal, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Would like to.
I mean, I know Elaine made a good point about the task force was specifically set up with both mitigation and adaptation in its name. And you could really argue that the mitigation side is really even more important, because if we don't stop burning coal, oil, and natural gas, then we'll just be trying to adapt forever, right? And that's not a reasonable solution, because the adaptation side, we absolutely have to do that, because we've already been burning fossil fuels for over 100 years, and those changes are already underway. But obviously going after the root cause with the fossil fuels. So I know that Gulf Power is at about 11% renewable, clean, and so that's still 89%, dirty, mostly natural gas. And most of their clean energy is wind energy that they purchase from Oklahoma. But they are investing in the solar here in the Panhandle, utility scale solar. As Elaine mentioned, that's still a big source of tension, is that the monopoly utilities in Florida really don't want you to have solar at home on your rooftop or of your home or your business. And so they have barriers, to try to kind of limit that. And that's still a source of tension that if that could be eased, that would help really democratize the energy and the access to the energy and allow more of us to get to it at home. So
it's also part of the smart planning, because we live in an area that's constantly threatened by weather, hurricanes, and those natural occurrences. And decentralized power systems always help to kind of not rely on the central power. And we also trying to figure out ways to bury those power lines. And I know that there's expense, there's costs with everything that we're doing. And perhaps one way to really look at renewables is to this public and private engagement, but also where the community is. What I see a lot of demand for solar on houses and private properties. And I'm encouraged also to see large solar development by utilities as well, whether it's in partnership with private sector or with military. It doesn't matter. I want to see more solar fields. I want to see more solar panels everywhere.
Yeah, we really do need to pick up the pace of that transition when we talk about meeting those goals and what the IPCC recommends. There really is a sense of urgency there. So
yes.
If no one else has anything else to add on that one, then I'm going to ask Councilwoman Myers just to maybe speak to what she might see in the year ahead for the City Council's role and how the council can help to carry forward the task force's work.
Yeah, I think that what needs to be done, first, this was a council-created task force. We need to officially, by resolution, accept the recommendations. And I think that we should hear a progress report twice a year. And the reason being, it has to do with how the budget is prepared. So you really need, we really need by the end of the year to have a report with enough information to make budgetary decisions. We start working on the budget generally, the fiscal year starts in October. So we begin to work on the budget actually in January. So it's very important that everything we do has to be tied to the budget in some way. So it's very important that the council have a good grasp on what's how we're going, what needs to move forward, and that that we are able to see these things reflected in the budget. So that's important, and I can make that happen in terms of putting anyone on the agenda to do a presentation. I would like to invite 350 to do a presentation soon for the new council members. All of the council members are actually new. You know, because I think that we adopted the task force presented their recommendations before Councilwoman Hill and Councilman Jared Moore were on council. So I'm the only one on council who has seen the presentation that Elaine did. So this new council needs a lot of education. Also, the community. I would like to see some money set aside for a plan to do a lot of educating in the community. And I'll give you an example. This is an emergency. We all agree that climate change is an emergency. We can all agree on that, right?
Yes.
So if you look at the pandemic, when we first started wearing masks, we had a lot of resistance. But I will tell you that we do have a mandatory mask ordinance, but even without that mandatory mask ordinance, you see a lot of people wearing masks because they've been educated. And so whenever it comes up, if the public thinks that we're going to repeal that mask ordinance, we start getting a lot of emails from doctors, from the public. No, keep the mandatory mask ordinance. So what we need to do is we need to educate our people about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why they need to be on board, and what they can do in their individual lives to address this issue. And we need to handle this the way that we have been handling the pandemic. And it's education, remind, and keep reminding. And so that's something that I would highly recommend.
Well, Councilwoman Myers, we're going to be looking to you for leadership on this for sure this year ahead, since you're the one that really created the task force. And as you mentioned, you've been there the longest now on council. You are the senior member in the sense of the number of years of service now, which is, I guess, is it 10 years? It's a decade, right?
Right.
10 years, yeah. So we're definitely looking to you for leadership on that this year, and I appreciate that. And it's a great reminder from you that, and for those who don't know the structure of our local government, the council has the power of the purse. They appropriate the funds. They decide what funds get appropriated, and they also have the power to legislate. And frankly, we've had a council that's been fairly lazy about both of those things in the past. Not Councilwoman Myers, but many council members who are no longer there, who were very passive in their council role. And I think now, knowing what I know of the new council and the ones that have served the last 2 years, we have a much more active and engaged council that I'm sure and I know is going to take a much more active role in both legislating and in asking questions and shaping the budget, as opposed to simply taking the budget that's delivered from from the mayor, which is part of the mayor's duty to do as well. So there was a question about costs and the costs of implementing some of the recommendations. Obviously, there's costs to doing a lot of things. There's also a lot of chances to save money in a lot of the things that the task force recommends. I know, for example, with solar energy, the city pays a lot in utilities. They have a lot of these community centers, and they have warehouses, and they have warehouses at the airport and in public works that have plenty of tremendous solar potential. And in fact, I now had a proposal done for the city as part of the transition team work that's on the city website. I guess the dilemma is coming up with that money on the front end and finding those innovative financing models, for the city to get those installed. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on just that front end issue that sometimes elected officials run into of you got to come up with the money or figure out a way to finance these improvements.
I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I think one thing that we need to do is show that these improvements save money over the long run. If you look at, I think that every community center, if converted to solar in the long run, will save us a tremendous amount of money. I'm in the process of raising money to build a new community center. And I want that community center to be the best example of the greenest building we can possibly build, so that people will come there and look at that building and say, that's how it's done, that's how we want to do it. I want it to be completely solar. I don't want any stormwater leaving the site. I want, so all of these things, we have an opportunity whenever we build a new building to build it the right way. I think we also need to look at incentivizing the private sector and working with the private sector to accomplish some of the things that we want to accomplish. I know the mayor has a monthly meeting with the Home Builders Association. So, I think that we need to look at, do we need to have more incentives for things? And so this is something, that we can adopt into legislation. If you all bring ideas about incentives that we can put into an ordinance, we already have an ordinance for some types of incentives, that's the starting point. And so, so there's just a lot of ways that we can accomplish this by being creative and innovative and partnering with the right people.
Yeah, and certainly, as I mentioned, there are long-term savings from doing a lot of the changes, especially the solar. I know the proposal that was done for the city under the transition team showed over $4 million in savings from one solar installation for the city over 25 years. That was the one I had them do for the Public Works Complex, just to run that as a proposal. So I don't know if, especially with Councilwoman Myers talking a lot about government and such, and obviously Dr. Alabazik works in governance. And I don't know, Dr. Alabazik, if you want to say anything just to follow up on Councilwoman Myers' comments, especially from the government side of things.
Yeah, I think a lot of these projects are fundable. They have perhaps a longer return on investment, but from the government perspective, they don't have to be constrained within a short return on investment. And that's perhaps where a lot of these projects that were proposed, especially solar on public buildings, would be achievable and feasible. I see those as part of the overall renewable energy, but also other energy aspects, projects where the government has already done a lot of energy efficiency improvements. And how far can you take energy efficiency improvements? Once those are done, renewable energy, it has to be a part of the mix. And doing renewable energy on site, especially solar, is going to be a critical component for many cities. And there, cities in different states are using, or even in Florida, they're using landfill sites for solar development. They're using roofs. They're using different funding mechanisms. And their cities have better ways of financing some of these projects than private sector does.
Very good. Anybody else want to add in on that?
I would like to make a quick point before we leave that topic of incentivizing businesses and citizens. One way, for instance, this is just off the top of my head, for people who are businesses that want to go solar, and we want to incentivize them to do that, there are a lot of ways to do that. For instance, all of these utility companies have to pay a franchise fee that's passed on to private citizens and businesses. So one way to possibly incentivize people is looking at possibly forgiving a franchise fee that might be passed on to a customer. So I'm just throwing that out there just to get us thinking about ways of incentivizing people and especially businesses. I would like to see solar farms over at Cordova Mall, where cars can park under them. I mean, they're doing this in other cities, you know? So how do we get that to happen?
Well, Councilwoman Myers, it's very timely that you're mentioning the franchise agreement, because the city's franchise agreement with Gulf Power is up for renewal now, and it's going to be coming, I think, soon before the city council. I know the staff's been working on it, and I've been looking at the draft version of it and have shared it around with some other folks around the state for comments. So there is perhaps an opportunity there to if we're going to give them the right to continue to do the energy, provide electricity here for 30 years, especially for that long, to see if there's some things in there that could be done, whether it's through the fees or something else, to make sure that they're providing the kind of service that we want. I know people have complained about some of the tree trimming practices, and there may be some other opportunities for improvement as well. So just in the interest of respecting everybody's time, we're coming up on an hour and 15 minutes. And we want to try to bring this in for a wrap up. And I just want to, I think, final question, and I'm sorry I couldn't get to all the questions, and I know there were some more in the chat, but I did want to just ask about, for the task force members, about children and about our future. Many of you have children, and even for those who don't, I think we all care about our future, or we wouldn't be doing this. We care about children. I think many of us follow Greta Thunberg and have been, inspired by her work. And increasingly, the climate movement in the United States and really internationally has become more and more a youth movement, which is just really, really exciting to see. So I think that's the last question I had really to pose to all of you to ask any of you to share your thoughts about the need for climate action related to your children's future, or the children in your neighborhood or in your family, whoever they may be.
I'll start first then. Christian, I have 4 children, all 6 to 12 years old. And I try to educate them about climate change. We got Greta's book, and we've been reading that before bedtime. But they understand the changes that are occurring, not just climate changes, but also environmental changes. And climate resilience is part of the whole climate justice issue that we're talking about, not just my children, but also other children in poverty. That's why this vulnerability assessment study is very important, because we should never forget social aspect of sustainability and resilience, or how these climate changes that are occurring are affecting the most vulnerable population, and that includes children. And they're now left without any choice, and they have no say in the matter of what's going on planet Earth. And we see a lot of talk about commitment from big corporations, but at the same time, they're doing a lot more damage to the planet Earth. So it's just a part of this system-wide change that needs to occur. And really, children are going to be bearing the brunt of all these climate changes.
And it's so true about the vulnerable communities. Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I would say that was a great question, and thank you, Dr. Alabazik, because that's something I left out of our vulnerability assessment, but we will be looking through that social justice lens as we evaluate the data that we have. So that's a very critical part of that. Mark and I have met with Dr. Avant on the Environmental Advisory Board, had some discussions there. And so we plan on making that a fairly robust component at some point. It may not be through this particular grant, but again, we're going to build on this assessment. We're going to keep that social justice lens as a top priority. And likewise with that community resilience index on that social piece of it, which is probably what I'm most passionate about. That's what said, that it's easy to score yourself high and think you're doing well there. But that's really, it's a tough conversation to have. You're talking about the children in the future. And it's a very important piece of that community assessment that you do, the social component of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. I mean, clearly, we all have a role to play. I mean, the people who are have not had full access to the opportunity in America, those that are disadvantaged are clearly more vulnerable in all these changes that are going on now, and we absolutely have to account for that in our work. So, anybody else on just that point about children or future? Any of the other task force want to comment on that as we wrap up? Well, I guess with that, I want to thank everyone for participating, for coming together. We've, I guess we've done this 2 years in a row now, or something like this, since the task force issued its report. So I think maybe we'll just go ahead and make it a date for next year as well, huh? And so just make this something we do every year, and we'll hopefully next year we'll come together in person. I hope, right?
Yes.
We'll have gotten through this and moved on to better times, and hopefully. Absolutely. By next year, we need to be hopefully seeing more, more tangible action on really, especially the transition to renewable energy. And by that point, some of the work that Cynthia is doing will be much farther along, and you'll have more to share. And maybe that dashboard for the city will be set up, or some things measuring progress that Dr. Alabazik talked about. So thank you all again for the service you gave to the city on the task force, and for continuing to work on these issues in the community. And Councilwoman Myers, I do want to thank you again for all the work you did to create the task force and to get it going and to push it forward. And now, as you continue to serve us on the city council to help make great things happen with that in 2021. So with that, I think we will sign off. Thank you all for participating. Climate change is absolutely the epic challenge of our time, environmentally, economically, and socially. And we all have a role to play in our communities. And I hope to work with all of you in the year ahead. In the meantime, I hope you all have a very wonderful and joyous holiday season with all your friends and family. And we'll pick this up again and get really involved and get after it in the new year. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
Thank
and
you,
take
Christian.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.